feel like I got to figure out a new dance move. I think for season 9, ooh, ooh, I think I want some new moves.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's a little limited on the screen. Like
That's
what I
true.
mean, if we back up and jump up, we could
Yeah,
completely go for it. But
that's
then
true.
that's a totally different show.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I love your
How are you
dance moves,
doing?
my friend. I
Thank
am
you so much.
well. I am
Good.
well. How are you?
I'm good. Grateful. So grateful. Like we talk about, always grief and gratitude. I'm so glad I have that example because it helps keep me sane with all of the different things we have going on.
Right?
Yeah.
It's been a lot. I've been
Hmm.
talking to a lot of clients who are,
Yeah.
it's been tough lately. They're
Yeah.
they're really, there's a lot of big, heavy stuff that's going on in the world right now,
Yeah.
and it's summertime,
Hmm.
and there are things to be grateful for,
Yes.
and yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about gratitudes for a minute, my friend. What are you grateful for this week?
Oh, this week, I'm grateful for a brand new godson. And yes, yes. And I'll say the ability to choose when I spend my time, where I spend it, just time
Mm,
management skills. Yeah.
mm, I
Yeah.
like
What
it.
about you?
Well, I am grateful for healers. I have been focusing on my self care, and I was shopping around for a new chiropractor because my old chiropractor quit taking my insurance, and
Mm,
I am grateful to have healthcare that I can
yes.
access that. So yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
taking care of my body and my spirit, and grateful that I can
Good.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a massage actually did not have it. I had it scheduled. And this is actually the one that I rescheduled for May 10th. So it is July 13th,
Mm,
2022. Had to reschedule it because I got scheduled to work. Okay, so I went to work, finally got it rescheduled, and the day before the time changed. And I saw in the text message that said 2:30 and 1 o'clock. I need my hour and a half. I had the time budgeted. And July 9th was actually my godson's due date, right? He was born on July 7th. And so had the time to go, and I left the house a little bit later than expected. I didn't feel right about leaving early. I said, "No, I want more time with my godson, of course." And
mhm.
my appointment was moved. Looks like I'm not making the appointment. And so
Oh.
I moved it so I could hold baby Braden a little bit longer.
Oh, nothing better
Yeah.
than holding a new baby, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was my physical wellness, choosing the priorities. And you know what? I can wait a little bit longer for the massage. I'll massage myself with some Shaylo Glow.
I love
That's
it.
what I did.
Should we
Yeah.
do our intro and kick this off officially?
Let's intro it. Yes,
Let's do
yes.
it.
I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial business owner, the founder of Shaylo Glow, an all natural skincare company. I am your champion for daily self care, business care, and intentional wellness.
Hey, y'all, I'm Christine Gotro, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, published author, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Yes, together we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast grounded in the 8 dimensions of wellness.
And we like to get together every week and with special guests for weekly intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do this thing?
Yeah. No, it's a good question because there's a lot to do. I think about the difference of women now and the women before. Things are similar and some things are a lot different. So what does it look like? I can get advice and pull from stories of times before, but sometimes you might be the first person going through that situation. So I love doing this with you.
I do too, my friend. What are we talking about today?
Cool. Today, we're talking about physical wellness. And physical wellness is the ability to maintain a quality of life that allows you to thrive in your daily activities without undue fatigue or physical stress. Physical wellness recognizes that our daily choices, habits, and behaviors have an impact on our overall health, well being, and quality of life.
Whew, that is
Mhm.
true. I'm
Yeah,
excited to talk with our guest today
me too.
about physical wellness, and she has a very unique perspective, and it delights me. But before we do that, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, like, How you doing on physical wellness? Like, I know
Mm,
you're juggling a lot right now,
yes.
and we both are with us on deadline for this book coming out and
Hmm.
work and everything. So, how's it
Yes.
going for you?
So I've been doing a really good job. And I had to get back onto my routine, my morning routine for the time for myself that started slipping a little bit, right? So the workouts are back on. The hydration is definitely on. It's a different situation with the water bottle, though, right? I like to bring
Mhm.
my water bottle to work. If you work in the hospitality industry, you know your drinks have to be in certain cups, certain places, labeled a certain way. And so my water bottle would be too far. So it changes my water system. So I've been intentional about staying hydrated in this kitchen that was 89 degrees for the past 2 weeks. You were talking about double triple digits in Texas earlier, so staying on that and stretching. Shalo Glow just did the production day, we were refilled, so physically I'm doing really good.
Well
Yeah.
done, my friend. Well
Yeah,
done.
I had my teeth removed. I've been using my water pick, and my electric toothbrush is charged now, so we're on the routines, yes.
Yay! Yay! Yay!
Yes.
Yay!
Yes. Actually, the one routine I actually am a few days off is the shaving routine and stuff. You gotta stay on the
Mhm.
exfoliation and the not the wax, but because I shave, but the
Mhm.
hydration and everything, and I'm a little off for that, but the moisture is there, so I call it a A.
Yeah, be gentle with yourself. We're not
Of
perfect.
course.
I mean, that's the
No,
thing
we're
with all
not.
of these, that anybody that's listening to us for any amount of time knows that, perfection is impossible. So
Right.
just giving it your best shot. So,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
and it's not realistic to always hit all the points every single time,
right,
so definitely grace around that. What about
right.
you?
I'm resetting.
Mhm.
I have been a little out of routine because of travel, but this week,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, I'm resetting with the chiropractor, walking early mornings or late evenings because of the heat, and
Mhm.
stretching and interplay. And my goal is to move and have
Yeah,
fun every day. And I
yeah.
love to dance, and so that's always fun. And every time you say hydration, I think, "Ooh, I need to drink more water." So I know
Mhm.
that's true. But I have some really great mint growing on my patio, and I want to do some infused waters and teas this week. And
Ooh.
yeah,
I've
I
been thinking
think,
about it. What do you infuse your water with?
ooh, I love to infuse my water with like cucumber and mint,
That's
and
exactly what I was
sometimes lemon
thinking.
and lime, but I love
Imma
a
do
good
it.
cucumber mint. It looks so pretty, and then you open your fridge and you're just like, "Oh, I want to drink that,"
Yes. Yes.
So, because otherwise I get in the habit of drinking too much tea or coffee. I
I
have
hear
a
what you're
little bit of a
saying.
caffeine addiction. So,
Mhm.
I I really like to make my waters pretty. And I like regular
Mm.
water too, but there's something about opening the fridge and that pretty picture of water being there.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about being able to source it out of the garden or the patio. And I'm so are you about ready to bring on our guest? Because I really am excited to bring her on and have this
Yes.
conversation as we're talking about gardens.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's do it. All right, y'all. Missy, our guest today is Missy Singer DuMars. She comes from a deep tradition of entrepreneurship and business, having grown up in a multi-generational family business. She worked in entertainment lighting, managing multi-million dollar projects, including I said it wrong. Cirque du Soleil and Celine Dion Caesar's Coliseum. How cool is that? From
Yeah.
there, she transitioned to the holistic community and now has over 20 years' experience with counseling, teaching, facilitating retreats, and event planning. She supports business owners to grow their business in a way that is authentic, conscious, and sustainable. Missy owns and manages Crown Hill Farm, where she grows heirloom vegetables, raises heritage poultry, and long wool sheep for naturally hand dyed yarns. I mean, this woman can do it all, y'all. She educates on food issues through her farm and podcast, Women in Food. The farm also serves as a venue for groups, events, and private retreats. We are so excited to welcome Missy to our stage today.
Hi.
Thank
Hello,
you. Thank you.
Missy.
I'm like, oh my God, you're talking about hydration. I gotta have my cup
Oh,
in front of me.
Yes. Yes.
right,
Apparently,
right.
I need to throw it on my whole body.
What do you like to, as a farmer, as somebody who is farm to table, what
Yes.
do you like to infuse your water with?
Well, so that's interesting because in the spring, early April, I had COVID pretty bad.
Mm,
And that actually pushed me up all my self practices a lot. And what my doctor, who's a wizard and amazing and a gift and a dear friend, who's both Western and alternative medicine, had me doing was drinking my body weight in ounces every day
Okay.
mm,
with electrolytes. So I'm not quite doing that much because that would be like a gallon and a half almost. But I have a half-gallon mason jar and I fill it every day and put electrolyte powder,
mm.
organic, in it, and I try and get
Right.
it done by the time I go to bed.
Well, and you need it especially so as a farmer
Yes,
in the
yes,
summer. But
yes.
I love that for all of us, really, when I think about summer and I think about electrolytes.
Yeah, and in the least, put some sea salt and or the real salt that has all the minerals in it, and some lemon juice, and you're good to go. So you don't need to buy fancy powders. You just need lemons and salt
Ooh,
to give
nice.
yourself electrolytes. Fast electrolytes is coconut water. I mean, there's just so many ways that are not in
Right?
Gatorade and that garbage. So what I think is garbage. So
It's okay.
no
Yeah.
opinion there. So but I do also make I was like, I don't know if you saw my message. I'm like, let me in the
Yes,
conversation
yeah,
Right?
because you're talking
yeah.
about infusing water, and I have groups come for farm tours and for dinners and things, and I always do some kind of water infusion for them. And I
Mm.
grow purple shiso, which is a herbal leaf.
Wait,
Um,
spell that.
Shiso, Shiso. Purple shiso. It grows really easily. It's a really unusual herb. You can use it for all kinds of things, but it's fun
Mm.
to put in water because it'll make sort of this grayish or bluish water. But then when you add lemon juice, it turns hot pink. And so it's always like
What?
a fun thing to do with my guests. I pour it into their glass and I give them each a wedge of lemon. And I'm like, all right, now make lemonade. And they're like, whoa. You know?
What a fun thing to do at a kids'
Yeah, I like
party.
to do that with
Uh,
kids too. Butterfly pea flowers do the same thing, which is very much
mm,
a fad right now in a lot of drinks. If you see blue, like
mm.
neon blue, turquoise drinks, that's butterfly pea flower, which is a Southeast Asian flower. And when you add
We'll put
lemon,
links to these in our show
yeah, yeah,
notes
yeah.
so people can find them. That's
Yeah,
really
so
cool.
I do a lot of that stuff, but I also like to do like mint and cucumber slices is a good one, or
Mhm,
mint and lime and cucumber is a
mhm.
favorite, or if I have basil, do basil and cucumber, anything.
Right. I had a ginger limeade this last weekend.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
before the show, I was mentioning to y'all, and I'll just tell our listeners, I was in Asheville, and there's this awesome cafe called Sunny Point Cafe that I like to visit when I'm there in West Asheville. And they are a farm to table. And so they have the restaurant, and then behind the restaurant is this gorgeous, I would guess, quarter acre, maybe a half acre at the most, um,
That's
garden.
huge.
It behind the restaurant, yeah.
I
Like, I
mean,
mean,
I have a
it's a
13-acre
huge.
farm, but my gardens are only about 4,000 square feet,
Yeah,
so
it
that's
is a huge
huge.
garden. Like, I mean, it takes a minute to walk through it, and I may be exaggerating a little because, when it's really packed in there, it looks way bigger than it
Yeah.
is, but it's several plots for sure. And, it's beautiful because they have flowers mixed in with, I'm pretty sure they had the pea flower because I have the Picture This app that I use, and there were several things that I was like, "What is that? What is
Well,
that?" And
you can tell the pea flowers really easily because, first of all, they're a vine, so they're gonna go up a
yep.
trellis somewhere, and they're like this beautiful bright blue purple, and I'm gonna say a word, they look like a clitoris, and that's actually their name, Clitoria ternatia. And so, it's really easy to identify if you know what you're looking at.
Right?
Okay.
I
Women
love
connected in
that.
wisdom, yes.
I know, I
Right?
figured we're women here, we can talk about
Yes.
that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and Missy, you said you also had an app for, identification of plants and flowers that you like to
Plants
use.
and flowers and pests, and
Mm.
bugs. It does both. It's called Seek, and it's by Inaturalist. Yeah,
Okay, we'll put a link to
it's a
that in our show
good
notes.
app. Pretty good app.
Yeah.
But I've used it like when I go walking at Niagara Falls, which is near me. I'm like, oh, what's that plant? What's that plant? What's that
Mhm.
plant?
Right?
Yeah.
I love that we share that. So, for our listeners that don't know, I was raised in Texas by somebody who was a horticulturalist and he loved gardening. And when he retired from teaching, he started a small organic farm. And I mean, we gardened our whole, I used to joke and say that was his disciplinary strategy was to have a farm in Texas because his garden was much larger when we lived at home than it was when we left home. And then he had years where it was a small garden. And then when he retired, it got bigger again, right?
And gardening in Texas is like a whole nother thing.
It's a thing, right? It's a
Yeah.
big thing. And he does organic gardening. And so I was really excited to have you on, Missy, because like it just delights me that you are doing this farm, that you have a podcast about women in food. And we wanted to have you come on the physical wellness because of how important food is to us. Like, I think people are starting. I mean, I want your opinion on this. Like, I think people are starting to realize it. But I was watching, have you seen the documentary Gather on Netflix? Yeah, talking about the food deserts. That it was about the indigenous tribe, the Apache, out in Arizona, and how much of a food desert. And it made me think of it when you say Gatorade, because like they were basically saying, a lot of the kids are having diabetes and they are having health problems because they had to shop out of convenience stores. And there's a whole movement, there's a whole natural food movement of getting people back to the earth. What are the plants we should be eating? What is good for our body? And, I was raised farm to table before that was even a term. And I didn't realize how lucky I had it until I went to college and people tried to serve me asparagus out of a can. And I was like, that's not asparagus.
I didn't know they had a canned asparagus.
Oh,
but it makes sense.
You do not need to know, and I do not recommend it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because I think there's like actually a deeper level than just knowing that information. My podcast, I interviewed a farmer friend of mine, Heather Fukase, who is Australian born, but she farms in Japan. And she was talking about, and she raised her kids in Japan, and she was talking about this thing that fascinated me, how that in the school system in Japan, the children from like kindergarten, pre-K, whatever they start in the school system, they get school lunches, and the lunches actually have information and are teaching them seasonality, and they're learning how to cut things, and they're learning how, like, what part of Japan different foods come from and when and why, and like how to fillet raw fish, or like just all these things from a really early age. And I was like, that's the level, like it has to be so part of everyday experience that that's not something you have to think about. And I think that's where people get hung up with changing food choices, is that it's a lot of effort when there's something else that's easier,
and convenient, right?
And convenient. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I realized recently I had the story in my head that growing things was hard. And I was like, and of course I had that story in my head because my dad would plant things like 100 tomato plants, and it was my job to pick them.
He was farming in Texas. That's just hard. Let's start
right?
there.
Right? It's hard. And when you're a kid and you weren't the one that planted them, but you had to go pick them, like, and sometimes it was your punishment to go pick them. Like, so I was really untangling all this about it being hard and realizing when you do it on such a large scale, or when you do it in certain places, it may be hard. But having a little cottage garden in my house right now is not, it's a joy. Like, I'm starting to realize the joy of being reconnected to the earth, the joy of being able to go out and pick something that I serve to my family. And, in the movie Gather, they were talking about food sovereignty, like us having control over where our food comes from. And I love what you were saying too about seasonality. Like, what's in season? Like, I mean, here in Georgia, I mean, nobody's going to be shocked at this, but it's the season for peaches.
Yep.
Right? And there is nothing better than a fresh peach off the tree at this time of year.
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, my brain exploded with so many directions. I want to go. First, I want to say something about the garden piece and it being hard or easy. One of the things I try and keep in mind, and I even tell people ask me, what do you grow? And I'm like, well, I don't grow. Mother Nature grows. I'm in service to that. I'm in service to her. I'm in service to the land and the plants. And I steward the container as best as I can. And anytime I get into a place where I think I'm growing, that's where it doesn't work, or where it feels hard, or where it feels like work. And when I can allow it to do, I mean, every seed, every plant is designed to grow and provide food, the seeds for food, or provide whatever fruits or flowers or medicine that it provides. And so as much as I can remember that and stay in that place, and like you said, we're not all perfect, so I forget sometimes, and I'm like, production, we got to do this. But I try and keep that in mind. Like, Mother Nature does the growing, and so it shouldn't be hard. Now, I'll kill a house plant, but you're talking about a very confined plant. I cannot grow house plants. Like, if it's not out in the garden, forget it. Like, I have to have my grandparents water the plants on the porch, the hanging baskets, because if Mother Nature can't take care of it for me, like, I'll forget.
Okay, that tickles me so much and makes me feel so much better about myself, Missy, because I want
Really?
you to tell our listeners like what you are currently harvesting, because this list is
Oh my God.
impressive.
It's
Like,
a lot.
what are
I
you-
just sent it to a chef recently. Let's see. We pulled kohlrabi yesterday. We've been harvesting thousands of shallots and garlics today. Chard is in season. Collards are in season. The string beans are starting to show and come out. Of course, all the herbs, tarragon, parsley, chives, are all season long. The edamame is almost ready to flower, I think. Squashes and watermelons are coming up. They're not fruiting yet, but they were seeded recently. All the tomatoes and all the vines are fruiting like crazy, but not red yet. Peppers are fruiting like crazy. Eggplants are starting to push out. Like, I have to walk through every garden in my mind. It's like there's so much right now. We finished so many things already. We finished peas, we finished scallions, we finished all the peas. I said that. Peas, scallions. Yeah, there's just a whole bunch that we finished already. And we're on to the next. We finished all the lettuces already. So yeah.
It's incredible.
Beets, a lot of beets, onions.
Oh my
So
gosh.
much.
I
So
wish
much.
we were closer so I could come over.
I was
I wish we
thinking
were
that.
closer
I
just
wish
to hang
people
out.
love,
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I get such joy out of walking through people's gardens. It's one of the things that I consider a self-care thing, like to go through and take pictures of plants or fruits and vegetables that are growing. It's one of the things that brings me joy. It even brings me more joy when I didn't have to do the work to get it.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I think about food. Like, when you eat and you didn't have to cook it, you didn't have to grow it. It's that sense of, did it bring you joy, but is it good for you? That's the question. So that's what I
Yeah,
love about
yeah.
farm to table.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's funny too about food when someone else makes it for you. I had an intern one year, and I said, "Do you like cucumbers?" And she's like, "Only if someone else cuts them for me. I won't eat cucumbers." And I have a girlfriend who, when I'm at her house, she makes the best salad. Like, I love salad, but I never like to make it for myself.
Mm.
Speaking
Yeah.
of salad, do you grow sorrel?
I have in the past, and I have the seed packet for sorrel, and every year when I'm doing my planting, I think this year I'm going to put it in. It's kind of more of a perennial, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I don't do a lot. I do more annuals mostly. So it's like, it feels like such a commitment to put a perennial in my garden. So I have commitment issues maybe with plants. Commitment
Good to
issues
know
with
yourself.
plants. Yeah.
So what is the difference? What's the difference between, you said, a perennial and an
Oh, so
annual?
yeah. So a perennial is a plant that is there all the time, basically. An annual, you have to replant it every year. So a perennial will overwinter, and then it will, often it will, like my chives are perennial. So if I keep cutting them, they'll keep growing. And then in winter, they kind of die off, but they're hibernating underground, and then they pop up again the next spring and the next spring. Biennials means every other year. So parsley is kind of a biennial in that one year it'll be beautiful and leafy, then you'll cut it back and it will keep its root, and then the next year it will come back, but it will be very flowery and seedy and not very leafy, and then the next year it will be leafy again. So It has a
Mm,
2-year cycle, and then annuals are 1-year cycles. So like all
got
your
it.
tomatoes, peppers, things like that, you when they're done fruiting, they're done.
Mm, that
So
makes
it
sense.
yeah. So a lot of herbs are perennials.
Well,
Mm,
I love that in talking about the seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think about this when I think about business. All of us own our own businesses. We help other people with their businesses.
yeah.
And there's this big push a lot of times you see on social media in the dominant culture about you've always got to be producing. You've always got to be dot 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 dot. And I often take a deep breath and I think about the flowers and the trees and I think about, that nature doesn't bloom every single second. Like
Mm-mm.
there's different seasons for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's different times to replenish and rest and hibernate, as you said. So would you speak to that a little, Missy?
Oh my gosh, let me start by saying I did not grow up around farms. I did not grow up gardening a thing and growing anything. So this is all like a new world for the past 6 years for me, and I'm mostly self-taught here with what I do. So um, I think one of the biggest shifts for me has been really deepening into understanding those cycles and shifting my perspective. Um, which comes to understanding the subtleties and the nuance of those seasonal cycles. Now, I live somewhere where there are actually seasons. I haven't always lived places that have actual seasons, but a good example would be autumn. So, autumn is actually abundance, that's harvest. Everything's fruiting, the seeds are dropping. Most people think autumn, everything's dying. Yes, late autumn, everything then dies, but that's after it produced. It's like, people think of summer as the big raw energy. That's where it's pushing a lot of energy out, but then the fruits are really coming to fruition in early autumn. And people think about spring as the time to plant seeds. And yes, if you're buying seeds, that is when you plant them. But in truth, a lot of plants drop their seeds in fall, right? The leaves die, the fruits, rot. The tomato, for example, drops off the vine when it's past its prime and it lands in the ground. And that means those seeds are sitting there and they're actually fermenting in that juicy tomato on the ground, and then they sink into the soil, and then they're there for the winter until it's time to come up again. And so understanding that, then shifting how I do business, shifting how I make decisions, um, to be aligned with that is a different kind of thing, to understanding that and then embracing those energetics in everything else I do. So seasonality, is a little bit of a different thing. It's an annual cycle, like business. It's like you launch something, you get feedback, you iterate, you launch it again, you get feedback, you iterate. I do that too, but it's a year later when I can iterate because that season doesn't come around until another year. So it's been a lesson for me of massive slowdown. And in that slowdown, there's room for observation, there's room for noticing, there's room for receiving, and deeper understanding and deeper wisdom comes out of the land because there's a slower pace.
I love that. I recently read, and I'm not going to call it up right, and maybe one of you know what I'm talking about, but there's a practice that has been coming to light recently where they're encouraging people to go to the same spot in nature every day.
Is that
And
forest bathing?
well, it's not the force. The force bathing is a part of it, but I think
Mm-mm.
there's a specific practice within it that you go and you sit in the same
Mhm.
spot and you observe, you rest and you observe, but you're also connecting with that piece of land and the animals that live there and the insects and the foliage and I'm lucky enough to do that where I live because I have a labyrinth in my backyard. And the first year after I built it, I was in it every single day
Mhm.
and one day I woke a hawk up singing. He wasn't very happy, but it was
Aw.
funny to me because it was like he was used to me being there. So he nested there. And so I can't remember the exact practice. I will link us to the forest bathing for our listeners. And if I come up with the exact name of what they're talking about, but I just think about that when you say that about there's room to slow down, there's room for observation. It's
Yeah,
like a
and
natural meditation.
yeah, truly. I mean, I feel like that about cooking too. I mean, I know culinary can seem like a fast pace. I've been in many professional kitchens and have many professional chef friends, and it can be a very fast pace. But when I'm cooking at home, it's my meditation. And people have been like, "Oh, I'll make breakfast." I'm like, "Do not touch the kitchen. I will cook breakfast. This is my morning practice. This is my meditation." I had an intern recently ask me about like, why do I have so many pots and pans and dishes? Like, live a simple life. And I'm like, this is my art form. This is my meditation. This is my work. This is my passion. This is my love. And so I'm going to have the best tools possible to do each task, so I can enjoy it. And but it is a slowing. It is a slowing down. When I talk to people about cooking, and sometimes I teach cooking classes, one of the things I learned was you don't always have to cook everything with the flame all the way on at high. Like some people cook everything on high. It's like you want a really lovely fried egg, cook at 50%, and just you have to wait an extra minute, but that's okay. It'll be cooked beautifully and perfectly. It's like just it is that slowing down. You were talking about the observation. There's a wonderful memoir called Dawn Again, written by Doniga Markegard, who is also a regenerative rancher and in California. And there's two books, but Dawn Again is her first book, and she talks a lot about her childhood, and she had the opportunity to receive like wilderness school as for some of her schooling, which was a lot. And she talks a lot about sitting in the same spot outdoors and observing the world and learning and noticing. And I'm not always good at that. I mean, I have my days where it's like I got a lot of shit to do and I got to get it all done. And even when I move quickly, I try and keep my inner world peaceful and calm as much as I can, my energetic. It's like I've been talking to an intern about that, that it may seem like I do a lot of things quickly, but there's not an energy of rushedness to it. And trying to find that place of like inner peacefulness and relax and move quickly. Like I don't need to move my hand this slow. I can move my hands this way, but still be calmed internally. And just playing with that kind of experience of pacing, so I can still observe. And I feel like the two things I try and teach my interns more than how to garden this or take care of the animals is observation and curiosity. Those seem to be the two most important things in the garden to me.
So, and I would say in general, right? Even working with people, we've talked on the podcast about being like flowers. So if you give them the patience, you give them the space to grow. My question is, I think it's great for them, right? My question is, how do you teach curiosity?
It is really hard. I mean, curiosity is so baked into me. And it's pretty much my top value. Curiosity and nourishment are my two top values. And I've thought about it a lot. I mean, I feel like curiosity is something that's not fostered in childhood anymore, really. I think curiosity and wonderment go hand in hand. I mean, I grew up with parents who were like, I don't know, go look it up. You have a question, go look it up. So I think that was fostered in me. But I think I mostly just model curiosity. Someone asks me a question, I'll just say, I don't know, let's go find out. Or I'll say, I'm curious, let's figure this out. I'm curious. I ask someone a question, I might say, I'm curious, what's this experience like for you? So just walking in curiosity sometimes can model it. And so one of the my favorite activity to do on the farm is watering, and we hand water everything. So I have irrigation in my two hoop houses or greenhouses, because navigating a hose in there is really difficult. But otherwise, we hand water, and I get pushback all the time about that. It's like it takes forever, and it's like why it's not efficient. And it's like this is very intentionally inefficient because it's efficiently fostering relationship with the garden. When you stand there and water, you notice, oh, this leaf is chewed up. Oh, there's a bug sitting on here. Oh, this is ready to harvest. Oh, this isn't flowering. And the next thing needs to be, I wonder, why is this happening? What is this about? What is this telling me? And if you're not sure, or if you at least just observe and let me know, then we can talk about, what does this mean? What do we need to do? How do we change things? So for me, the watering is morning meditation. I love doing it. And So I'm happy to do it most mornings. Once in a while, I want a morning off, but for the most part, I love doing it. And it's my way to like check. I mean, all the plants are my children. It's like check in with each of my babies and how they're doing and what's going on for them.
I was just about to ask you that question. Do you talk to your plants,
Oh,
Missy?
yes. I talk to my plants when I'm seeding I have a glass greenhouse that's attached to the house. And that's where I do all the seeding for stuff that starts indoors. And I often play various like mantra and sacred music that I enjoy of various kinds and sing those prayers to them. And when I'm planting into the ground, I try and remember to, just put my hands on the soil and talk to the plants and like, if you ever see me thin a row of something like carrots or radishes where you have to, seed them and then thin them, I pretty much apologize to every single plant that I thin out. It's like, I'm sorry. It's like, you work so hard. It's such a magical and funny thing. I look at the seeds in my hand. I'm like, which one of you is going to thrive? Which one of you is going to take off? Which one isn't? And then of those, which one am I going to choose to kill? Which one am I going to allow to share your fruit and then kill later? And, it's like, it's just a funny relationship to think about those things. And, so sometimes when I'm thinning, I'm apologizing. It's like, you work so hard to like break out of that shell of your seed and send roots down and then reach up. And now I'm going to just take your life. I'm so sorry. And then I wonder, like, is this the seed I was looking at, 2 months ago and thinking, oh, will this one survive or not? It's a funny. So yeah, I talked to that was a long answer to say yes.
I love that. I have a curiosity, like, because I loved in your bio that you were a part of Cirque du Soleil, and then all these really cool things that you think, oh my gosh, that's amazing. How did you change from that to farm? Like, what was the spark for you?
First, let me say I wasn't with Cirque du Soleil. My college degree was in entertainment lighting design, and I worked for a company that would sell and then manage the installations of big lighting systems in Las Vegas when there's new construction. So when Cirque du Soleil has built new theaters or things like that, we would supply their things. And it was fun, and I burned out. I was just telling someone yesterday or a couple of days ago, like I would work 70, 80-hour weeks in my 20s and have a lot of pressure and a lot of people yelling at me. And I mean, this was the career I went to school for and worked hard to build, and I loved it, but I burned out and I was going through a divorce at the same time, and it was just too much. And so I stepped away, and in the background, I had been studying like alternative healing. I'm a Reiki master teacher, shamanic healing, like all this kind of energy healing. And so I was starting to have a really good understanding of the spiritual body and the energetic body and the emotional body. And I was like, I want to understand the physical body as it relates to all this stuff I'm learning, and decided I wanted to go to massage school. And so I gave notice at my job, divorce was finalizing, the house was selling, everything was falling away all at once. Long story about how I ended up in massage school, but I ended up in massage school, did that for a while, and then fell into like holistic business to build that, and discovered I could like bring all my business experience previous back to this community of people who are helping the planet heal and be in a better place. And so I did a lot of business coaching, which I still do, a lot of business coaching. And the farming, I ended up in massage school in Hawaii, on Kauai. And I lived with a family that lived very off grid. It was a couple of properties down from school, so I'd walk to and from class every day. And, everybody's kind of lives off grid and close to the land. And the 10-year-old, he was 10 then, he's like a grown man now, but he was 10 then. And the day I arrived, he like picks a coconut off a tree and like hacks it with a machete and like, aloha, welcome. And that was kind of what happened. And, it was my first experience of pulling a carrot out of the ground and like hosing it off and just biting into it. And it was so alive and so vibrant. There was just, I could sense the aliveness and delicious. And so then when I moved back to California and the mainland, I was starting to seek farmers markets and fresher food. But really, my most recent ex-husband, number 2, he and I started to embrace a different wellness practice in what food we ate, and really required very specifically knowing where food came from, how it was tended, how it was grown. And so he had more of the dream of having a farm, and I'm like, that sounds fun and interesting. And I always had like a dream of a retreat center or something like that, and maybe some kitchen herbs or a little kitchen garden, but like nothing major because I didn't think I could grow things. And we saw this place, and there's a lot of magical stuff to this place. And now he's not here anymore, and I am. And I still love and bless him, and he's a huge supporter of me and what I'm creating here. And yeah, I just like I knew as things were splitting up between us that this place was not done with me, and I wasn't done with it, and I'm still not done with it. And I really clearly see myself as an old lady on this property, my flowing white nightgown and my big wild gray hair, walking through the gardens in a summer morning when it's all quiet. Like that's the image I have in my head. I don't share this with everybody, so now everybody's got it. And look what you did. You just get the deep story out of me. And so yeah, that's kind of how I became a farmer. And it started from a choice for my own wellness and my own food choices, and I can't help but share with other people and educate and teach and explain. And so
I think that is so beautiful, Missy.
thank you. That was a very complex journey of my entire life story.
I love it. Shannon, you look like you had a question, my friend.
No, I'm just listening because I know it's a lot. And I was thinking about all of our stories and how it's like this, it's kind of like that, I was here and then this led to this led to that. And I didn't think I would be here, but based on what I needed, we're in the positions that we're in right now, right? Helping women take better care of themselves for their self as individuals, because we have to be okay to be in these partnerships and relationships. And it just reminds us of the stuff we talked about all the time. That's what I was thinking about, Christine.
I love it. One of the things I want to bring up, because I know we can talk all day, and our listeners are probably like, hey, I'm almost done with my drive, or I'm almost done with my run. So we don't want to keep you all day. But one of the things I want to be sure and tell our listeners, Missy, is that on your podcast, you talk to women who are in food. You talk about different things. And one of the things I love about your podcast is every podcast, people can get a downloadable, printable recipe.
Yeah.
So tell us about that and why, like I heard you when you said, I can't help but teach. Cooking is my passion.
Yeah. Well, I feel a lot of people don't like cooking. They see it as something to get over with and something to get done with. And sometimes I feel like it's, something that's not enjoyable. And of course I have my days where I'm like, oh, let me just order a burger and be done with it. Like today feels like one of those days. Because it's like dinner time already and we're here talking. But and I feel like having good tools, a few simple tools makes a huge difference. Having a knife that actually cuts things makes slicing a tomato much easier. Having a pan where everything doesn't stick all the time and knowing how to use it makes things really easier. So I feel like food is such a base thing. We have to eat. We just have to eat. And that it's about more than nourishing our body. There's a part of food. And sometimes I talk about it. If you listen to my podcast, you hear me talk about hearthcraft, which is more than just the food. It's tending relationships, tending community, family, all the other crafts that are related. And so food satiates emotionally and physically and mentally on all those levels. It's a much more important, vital part of our lives than modern American culture has allowed it to become. And I just heard a story in NPR recently. I think it was on This American Life or something. I don't remember what it was, but they were talking about how in Paris, maybe all of France, but at least Paris, there's actually a law that you have to leave your office. You cannot eat lunch at your desk. And it's like an 1.5 to 2 hour lunch break. And people think, oh, that's a very French thing, but it actually has to do with some circumstances much earlier. And I don't even want to get into that because I may not repeat it correctly. But when it's fostered, it is a culture of like, get away from your desk, enjoy a meal, enjoy togetherness. Here on my farm, I have interns come and go, and I get pushback about, we eat dinner together. We eat almost every day. We eat dinner together, and it's important to me. And that is one hard and fast thing unless I say, because I usually make dinner like, okay, we'll all do our own thing tonight, or I'm going out or whatever. But most nights, like family dinner, having conversation. How are you? How was the day for you? What's important to you today? Like that is so lost in our culture and slipping away faster and faster. And so I don't even remember what question you asked me, but that's where I went with it. But the recipes, right? The recipes came from the whole podcast came from this idea I had, my business coaching, matching my farm to table dinners, and thinking, how can I make a package of farm to table dinners so people buy a package and I don't have to sell every dinner one at a time? And I thought, let me do a series where it's a discounted price if people buy the whole series. And I, at the same time, I was new to the area here, and I was noticing that it was the same 2 or 3 white male chefs and the same 2 or 3 old school white male farmers who were multi-generation farmers in the area who were always in the media when they needed to talk about farm to table, they needed to talk about a restaurant. And I'm like, how do the rest of us get heard? Like, how do I get noticed? I mean, it was very egocentric of how do I get noticed, but truly that also led me to notice that no people of any diversity of any kind were being noticed. And so I thought, I'm going to do a dinner of women farmers and women chefs, and we'll pair a woman farmer and a woman chef together for each of these dinners, and I'll do 4 of them. Then COVID hit, and so I couldn't do that, but I had all these people lined up, all these amazing women lined up. So I'm like, let's throw it on Zoom like everybody did in 2020. And I started doing a live Zoom series, and then it started to get noticed, and the Buffalo News wrote about it, and Yelp, the Buffalo community manager for Yelp, noticed and said, hey, I want to sponsor, for Women's History Month, or not Women's History, but it was like the 100th anniversary of the ratification of women's right to vote that year. And I want to like co-host it with you and co-sponsor it. And then they're like, we love this. We're going to do another month with you. And so it gained momentum, and I burned out a little bit. It was a lot. And my therapist, actually, who's also an amazing executive coach, said, hey, why don't you make it a podcast? And I was like, well, I know the resources on how to get help on how to make a podcast, which is how I know you, Christine.
Right.
And so that's how we have a podcast. And so I really, each Zoom call was each chef taught a recipe and how to cook it from their restaurant kitchen or wherever they were. And each farmer taught a gardening thing. And so I really wanted to keep that feel. And I always broadcast it from my kitchen, my farm kitchen, and had that like cozy feel. And so it was like, I still wanted every guest to share a recipe of something either seasonal or something related to what we're talking about or whatnot. And so it's been super fun because I get to geek out on food, which is my favorite topic, with everybody, and learn all these great recipes and hear amazing women's stories, and hopefully get their voices out there a little bit more than they've been in the past. So
I love that so much.
yeah.
I feel like I could just talk to you all day. I have one more question, and then we're gonna kick it to our wisdom in action. But here's my question for you. As a foodie, as we're talking about physical wellness, as we're talking about recipes, when you aren't feeling well, what's your go-to recipe? What do you cook yourself, or what does your body crave?
Well, I'm a good Jewish girl, so you can probably guess the answer. Is chicken soup. I always have broth in my freezer at all times. In fact, I have a chicken carcass in my fridge that is finished, that is waiting to go into the next round of pot, because I have too many. I can tell when my container drawer is too full that it's time to make more broth and put it back in the freezer. So that also I'm an egg farmer besides vegetable farmer. So very first food I will eat often, like especially if my stomach's been upset, will be a plain scrambled egg. Just because it's it's gentle on the stomach, it's easily digestible compared to most foods, and it's got a lot of nutrition, especially my eggs. So it's a way I can start to get nutrients back into my body gently. Sometimes
I love that.
But
so we share something in common. So before I ask Shannon, I'm just going to share with you. So we have a recipe in my family. We're from Texas, but we do a chicken tortilla soup when people are. That is my dad's recipe that my kids used to swear it was magic when they were feeling bad, and they would need Papa's chicken tortilla soup when they weren't feeling good. So Shannon, what about you when you're not feeling good? What do you make yourself?
I usually think about tea actually more than
Mhm.
food and like lemon honey tea. Now we've remixed it. Every time I make tea, I make simple syrup, even if it's like a honey simple syrup, right? So it's on the lighter side. And that's my go-to.
Girl,
Mhm.
you just brought my grandma Mahoney into this room, and
Hmm.
she used to feed us, she used to feed us honey, um, tea, and whiskey. Like,
Mm,
you remember what was it called? It was a hot toddy.
hmm.
Did
Mhm.
anybody else
Yeah.
have a grandmother that did this? That
I
I
did
had
have.
none
I
of it,
know
but
what you're
I
talking
definitely
about.
know what it is.
Yeah.
It was homemade cough syrup is
Mm,
basically what it
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
when you were
yeah.
a
mm,
kid. But
Yeah,
I
I love a
love that.
tea too. I
yeah,
definitely it depends on what kinda not feel good, you know?
yeah,
But a
Right?
cup of tea can always soothe the soul and soothe the mind, soothe the body. I feel like, you know, depending on the kind I have so many teas. I love teas. So, depending on the mood, time of
yeah,
day,
yeah.
various
Right?
things.
Yeah, definitely don't. I try not to drink chamomile or something that's more restful at the beginning of the day, right? That's like more of a Earl Grey green tea. I'm working on my tea list
Yeah, oh my
and the
gosh,
infused water.
chamomile, one of my chefs for his farm to table dinner did a chamomile ice cream,
Mm,
with my
Ooh.
chamomile because my chamomile's super strong, and, we were like, "Oh, gotta be careful what time of day you nosh on the leftover ice cream." Like, because it's really good, it's, vanilla, and then you get that hit of chamomile, but it's like, "Oh,
mm,
that'll make you a little drowsy." If you have it too
mm,
early in the day, it's good right before bed, it's like the one ice cream you can have before bed.
mm. That
That
makes sense.
sounds delish.
Mhm.
Mm. So I know we talked about food, right? We're still talking about food, which I am not mad about. So when you think about physical wellness, right, and your wisdom in action for this week, Missy, what do you think about?
Mhm. My wisdom in action for me
Yes.
is play, which has nothing to do with food, but play, and it does have to do with play with your food. I'll just say it that way.
Mhm.
Play with your food for sure.
Mm,
But
mm,
play, yeah, I just want to embrace some lighthearted play this
yeah,
week.
Oh,
yeah.
you're talking my language, Missy.
What about you, Christine? What's your wisdom in action this week?
I think my wisdom in action this week is
Mm,
hashtag nourish yourself. When I
mm,
think about this conversation, when I think about the work you do in the world, Missy, it's
yeah,
about nourishing our souls and our bodies and our planet.
yeah.
And just, yeah. So I'm going to say hashtag nourish ourselves.
Mm.
What about
Mine
you, Shannon?
is hashtag, let me see which one I want to pick. I've been doing multiple. Uh, I will say I do like let food be your medicine. That's what I'm working on. Getting back on my routine. Like I said, I finally brought my lunch back to work. I hadn't been doing that. My red cabbage and carrots and green cabbage. So that was good. So continuing on that healthy lifestyle. I don't diet. We got to be consistent. So yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Missy,
nice.
thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you for
today.
having me. It was so much
Yes.
fun, and we could talk for like 3 more hours probably.
Absolutely. Tell folks how they can find you, and we will also put all this info in our show notes. But if people want to
Yeah.
connect with you, what's the best way?
The best way is actually Instagram, and my Instagram is, Crown Hill Farm NY for New York. Don't put an S in there, I don't want more than 1 farm, people do that all the time. Single farm, 1 farm, Crown Hill Farm NY is my Instagram, and crownhillfarm.com's website, Spirit Biz, B-I-Z, people is if you're curious about my business coaching kind of stuff, and, Women in Food, obviously, is the podcast, which womeninfood.net is the website or whatever your favorite podcast place to listen.
Right. And
Listen
get
up
good
there.
recipes,
I
y'all.
get good recipes,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm gonna look. I've been looking for some new recipes. I'm gonna look into
What
it.
kind of recipe you looking for?
Yes, vegan. Vegan.
Vegan. We
Mhm.
had a vegan. Listen to the episode with Natasha. Um, she and her husband have a vegan bakery, like sourdough bakery, vegan in Whistler, Canada, and she gave us a vegan banana bread recipe.
That
Mm.
sounds good.
Listen to Dr. Chef Kimberly Brock Brown, who I love. She is the first a person of color and pastry chef to be the president of the American Culinary Federation. And
Mm,
she gave, because you guys, where you are, she gave a watermelon pico de gallo recipe.
Mm,
So that's a good
Ooh.
refreshing one since we're
that
in
sounds really
summer.
good.
Those are the
Right?
two. Yeah, watermelon. I love watermelon, tomato, a little onion, some fresh
Mhm.
herbs, a little feta if you do cheese. Um, it's such a good combination. But yeah, and she's a great. Her story is a great story. I adore her. I mean,
Mhm.
all the episodes are great, but those are the two I would say
Right?
would be the two to
Got
go
it.
for your next
Oh,
recipe. And
Thank you so
I wanna
much.
see your banana bread when you make it.
Yes, okay. I
you know
the
what we
watermelon pico de gallo might be first. I
First,
I
think
was
that's
that's
just
first,
okay.
about to
yeah.
say, she lit
Yeah.
up when she said
I
that.
know
It
watermelon. I had
was
a feeling the watermelon
Yeah,
pico de gallo, but then you said vegan. I'm like, oh, I gotta share the
right.
bakery.
No, and I
right.
love the banana bread too. Both of me and my partner like it, so I'm interested in both. Thank you.
Yeah.
Missy,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you for
today and for
having
this
me.
conversation. And
Yes.
we look forward to more and listening to your podcast and staying connected.
For
Mhm.
sure, for sure, for sure.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
my
so
friend.
much.
Oh my gosh, that was yummy.
Good job. Good job. And I didn't have questions. I was like, "Yep, she's right on the money. That's exactly what I wanted to know. What does Missy have to say to this?" That's what I was here for.
Right. I was definitely leaning forward today. You know, the farm girl came out in me.
Mhm.
One thing I forgot to mention that is when I think about farming, when I think about being in touch with Mother Earth,
Yeah.
and we may have talked about this early in our podcasting career, but you
Mhm.
know how some people will say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about the weather, or I want
Mhm.
things deeper." Right? Have you
Mhm.
ever heard that? Have you ever heard people say that?
Yes, I have.
Right, and I get a little offended by that, honestly,
Mm.
because as a farmer's daughter, like, nothing is more important than the weather, right? Like,
Mm.
and it affects our food, and it affects our planet, and it affects how we're doing, and it's one of those things that, you know, you wanna observe and you wanna pay attention to, and even thinking about today being a full moon, right?
Yeah.
Like, the
Yeah.
way we all interact with all of this is
Mhm.
important, and it's not superficial.
No. No, and I think it shows the disconnect that there is. We used to all have to hunt and gather if we wanted to eat. Now
Mhm.
it's Kroger, Walmart, Farmers Market. Where do you go to eat? And you're not worried about which tree the Ritz cracker was flying off of. That's not how it
Right.
works. So it just, for me, it shows a disconnect.
Well, and here in America, especially with our statistics of obesities and diabetes and health disease, it definitely plays into the physical wellness piece.
Yeah.
It plays into the that getting back to some of those indigenous traditions, getting back
Mhm.
to farm to table,
Yeah.
and knowing where our food comes from is
Mhm.
important.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, even knowing what's in it, I
right,
can't necessarily pronounce this chemical, but I know if it's onions and garlics and leeks and kale, then there's things that I'm eating specifically for the vitamins and the season that it's in, because I know it's fresh,
right.
not just for the flavor profile of it. Yeah.
I love this conversation, my friend. I know we're at time. So is
Yes, we
there
are.
any last thing you want to say? Anything you want to
Mm,
give a shout out to?
No, I think I'm good.
All
What about
right.
you?
Well, I was just thinking about the conversation. I was thinking about upcoming in August.
Yeah.
We've talked about alternate routes on this on the podcast before. It's a activist and artist organization I'm a part of, and I'm part of the healing team on that for that conference. And we talk about tea time and nourishment. And last year we did a whole project with recipes. I meant to mention this while Missy was on. And I was just thinking about that because that's rolling around at the first part of August and it just how it all ties together,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Yeah.
really, really grateful. So, oh, I also did want to give a shout out. Carolyn Renee, who was, I think she was one of our guests in either season 1 or season 2.
It
She
might have
and
been.
I are going
Yeah.
to do a Journey to Wellness pop up
Ooh.
next weekend. So I'm
Ooh.
going to put a tag to that in our show notes in case people are local and are interested. They can pop in and have a couple of hours of wellness and modalities with us. But
That sounds amazing.
yeah, I appreciate you, my friend. I am so
Absolutely.
grateful to have these conversations and
Yes, me too.
to continue on this road to wellness with you.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much, ladies, for listening in. We'll see you next week for episode 76. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll see you later.